my electric co-host who needs no introduction. A lot of you know him as Jay Ben. He's a former radio host for 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, Falcons insider, professor, coach, writer, whatever you think of it, he's done it. And you know what? If you want to go at him on X, at JMB_CU16, go at him, but don't cry about it when he goes and retaliates back, right? Don't play victim if you go poke him. So you're allowed to fuck with him, but when you do, there's no getting upset after that. So we've got another packed agenda for you guys. Before we get in, please like, comment, subscribe to the pod. We're on YouTube and Spotify. We only go as far as Falcons Nations take us, so buckle up. Enjoy the ride, and thank you for joining us on this flight path. Jeff, Jalen Walker falls to us at 15. He was rumored to go as high as even 5. Some people had him going to Jacksonville, but we stood our ground. We took him at 15, and then we, in typical Falcons fashion, we make a huge splash at pick 26. The Rams were on the clock, and we traded up. We gave up our 2026 first-round pick. We essentially slid back in the second round from 46 to the third round, 101, but then got a guy who the Falcons were ready to take at 15, James Pierce Jr. out of UT, Jeff's favorite program in college football. And basically... Jeff, I'm seeing stuff all over the web that's like, we gave up too much. How could we give up 2 first-rounders, etc., etc.? What did you make of this? Are you happy with the 2 pass rushers two pass rushers we got? It's crazy to even say it out loud in the first round of this year's draft.
So let's set some shit straight here, right? Let's start off by this. I absolutely feel vindicated, right? Because I've told everybody all along that Jalen Walker was their number 1, right? In every interview I've done, I've even said on numerous one of our episodes, but every interview I did, every question I answered, who are they taking? Jalen Walker. Well, he's not going to be available. Who's number 2? So then what do? Out of the kindness of my heart, I give you guys their top 7 on their draft board, right? Because the goal was to go down that draft list and take whoever was there. Okay, that was the goal. Yes, there were rumors about moving up and moving back and all of those other things, but ultimately they did not deviate from that draft board that I gave you. Not one bit. They took 1 and 2 off that draft board, right? And so we actually talked about, I think it was episode 3 here in Flight Path, we talked about, would you be willing to give up to move up to 7 to go get Jalen Walker ahead? Because the rumor was that Carolina wanted him, then the Saints wanted him, Jacksonville, how are they going to maneuver to go get their number 1 guy? And I actually said to you guys, why would you not be willing to give up your first-round pick in 2026 to go up and get a guy that you need at a huge position of need? Wasn't necessarily talking about James Pierce. I understand that, but my whole point is I said to you, if you address this need, you are in the playoffs next year. There's no, and I've been very firm on that. This offense is a top 3 offense in the NFL. All you had to have was a defense that could get a couple fucking stops. And next thing you know, you're winning 3 or 4 extra games. This defense has been transformed between free agency and just day 1 of the draft, right? And yes, you didn't give up your 2026. You swapped it out, right? You still have a first round pick. You just took it in 2025. So for me and everybody, and I know you're a math guy, and I'm not saying you're wrong here, right? But everybody wants to assign these weird arbitrary numbers to show how the Falcons got screwed out of this. My whole point to you is this: is if you look at the edge rushers for next year, James Pierce is probably 1 or 2 among the available for next year. You got the number 1 or number 2 edge rusher in next year's draft at number 26 this year. There has to be a value assigned for that. And nobody's willing to do that. So for me, I said it immediately. I loved what they did. I loved that they were willing to get to take 2026 first round in 2025. I think they addressed need in 2 different ways. You got 2 different types of pass rushers. right? You got a freak athlete, and they are very different body wise. I actually just posted the picture on Twitter. There's about a 4-inch height difference between the two. James Pierce is ginormous. Jalen Walker, 6'2", 260. He's a normal size looking guy. James Pierce is just a monster looking guy without his pads on. I love the draft picks. I love what they did. You essentially you moved back from the second to the third round. You gave up a seventh to go get your 2026 draft pick early. I love it. I love that Arthur Blank was willing to allow Terry Fontenot to go do that because he could have said no. I think Jeff Ulbrich has what he needs to transform this defense into what he had in New York. And I am absolutely fucking ecstatic with the way that last night went down. I don't know that I've been this excited since, I hate to say it, since Vic Beasley, right? And it wasn't because I'm a Clemson alum and Vic Beasley was the premier pass rusher. I think both these guys are far better than Vic. And more importantly, it wasn't Vic's talent that was the issue. It was the fact that he didn't give a shit about football. And I don't think you have to worry about that with these two guys.
Jeff, a lot of mainstream insiders, what typically gets them to set off, in my opinion, at situations like this is when they're not in the loop. They had no idea that, Falcons valued JPJ that high and that they wanted to trade up. And when that uncertainty hits them, that causes them to react. So, if you look at every single mainstream insider, they're just bashing Atlanta. There's not one person out there besides Falcons fan. And for once, it's the Falcons fans saying hey, this is great. We wanted one, we got two. And to your point, we just used the 2026 first round pick on a guy that we were willing to spend a 2025 15th overall pick for. So, the math works out. You can do whatever you want. You could assign any arbitrary number you want. But at the end of the day, those are based on historical averages. People just trying to, I'm in this business. I know you assign subjective values to things to trying to quantify it, right? Well, you know what you can't quantify? How Raw, Brick, and Terry Fontenot feel about James Pierce Jr. and pit that against the 15th overall pick, the 10th overall pick. That's what matters at the end of the day. They got their guy, and hopefully it works out.
Yeah, and ultimately, to me, that's what matters, right? They got their guy. The same people shitting on this Falcons trade and how they got fleeced and this, that, and the other also had Mike Green as the best pass rusher in this draft, right? Even though every quantifiable number you have says that they were wrong, they still had that. These same people still had Shedeur Sanders going in the top 5, right? Both those guys are sitting at home, waiting for their name to be called. So I have always said I take it with a grain of salt when the media on somebody, because teams completely feel different. Right? Teams do not feel the same way media does. That's why teams are in draft rooms behind closed doors, and that's why the media is out here, screaming from the top of their lungs, that they're right. And I always try to caution people, man. Just because Adam Schefter or what's the moron's name at ESPN that's been there for 30 years now,
Mel Kiper.
Mel Kiper. In 35 years of doing this, Mel Kiper has not been right one damn time. And everybody wants to take what he says as if it's some sort of, Bible. He's yet to be right. And nobody shit on this trade worse than ESPN did yesterday. If you have your notifications on for ESPN, it was immediately Falcons get F-. That's not even a grade. F- isn't even a grade. It's an F. But everybody's crapping on this trade. And then if we're being honest, whether you like the trade like I do, or I love the trade, whether you like it or you love it or you hate it, let's wait 4 years and see where this actually lands, right? Because 4 years from now, we'll know exactly how this trade went down. We'll know exactly who got fleeced and who didn't. But my instincts tell me the Falcons will come out on this one, and a lot of us will be looking back on these idiots and laughing really, really hard at them.
Yeah, for sure. Jeff, look, if they both hit, we have 2 pass rushers for 5 years at very, very minimal deals. We're talking about almost $30 million combined. I think it's $18 million for Pierce and $18 million for Walker, $13 million for Pierce. We're about to give Micah Parsons $30 million. So that's Pierce and Walker combined. We're gonna give Micah more per year and give up 2 first round picks. Jeff, let me ask you this. Let's rewind the tape. Let's go back in time. If I told you, hey Jeff, instead of what just happened right now, you could have Micah, but you would have to give up basically everything you just gave up right now. The 2025 first, the 2026 first, the 2025 second. So basically all the draft capital that was wasted today goes, but you have to pay Micah $40 million. Do you like where you're at right now, or would you take Micah?
Oh, I feel like you want me to answer a certain way, and I don't know that I'm going to, right? I mean,
I want you on the stage.
Honestly, I would take Micah.
Okay.
And I love these draft picks, but here's why. Let me state that, because when you look over the course of NFL history, okay, which is a really important number, the only person that has done what Micah Parsons has done in his first 4 years in the NFL was Reggie White. Think about that. That's how generational Micah Parsons has been. So if you tell me I got to give up 3 first-round draft picks and $40 million a year to go get that guy, I'm going to go get that guy. But that doesn't mean I don't love what they just did. You give me anybody else, and the answer is going to be completely different. But when you get, like, if you had said, hey, we can go get TJ Watt, or we can have this, or we can go get Myles Garrett, or we can have this, I'm going to take what we have now over those two guys. But Micah Parsons, to me, is in a whole different level, because what he has done in his first 4 years has only ever been done one time, and that was by arguably the best defensive end of my generation, my lifetime, in Reggie White. You know,
Yeah.
so if you're under the age of 40, you don't remember Reggie White. You may remember the older aspect of him in Green Bay, where he was at the end of his career. You don't remember the Philadelphia Eagles Reggie White. You don't remember the actual minister of defense and what an absolute beast that dude was.
The Reverend.
Yes, right? Like, it was. So when that is the only comp you have in NFL history, I'm going to take that every time. That said, I love what the Falcons did. I think Terry absolutely knocked this out of the park. He could not have done better. And I'll be honest with you, when I saw that we traded back in last night, I was like, oh shit, we're about to go get Malachi Starks. I was jumped. And then they said James Pearson. I was like, let's
Even
run.
better.
Like, let's line this thing up right now and go play, right? Like, instantly geeked. I was not going to allow anybody to bring me down last night or today. All the haters can keep all their nonsense to themselves. I absolutely love what took place. And for me, this is the best draft that he has put together in his 4 years as general manager. And I mean, I love Bijan. I think Michael Penix is going to be a stud. Drake London is absolutely insane, right? Like, they put together really good draft picks in the last 3 years. But God, he knocked it out of the park last night.
He really did. And I think he was a little shocked himself that Pierce just kept slipping and he couldn't help it. But yeah, I mean, that's incredible, Jeff. So speaking of safety, one person that the Falcons have been tied to in the past few weeks is Jalen Ramsey. Do you think that's still an option on the table? And I know he would probably come in and play corner, but do you think that now we have more limited draft capital? Could we potentially trade away our 3rd round pick today, or even our late 3rd round, the 101 we got from the Rams, or even our 4th round pick, 118, to get Ramsey today? Do you think that's on the table?
Yeah, I do, actually. I was actually texting with my source back and forth, just trying to figure what's going on, tonight. And no, unfortunately, I don't have any knowledge for you guys. But I had said, is 101 or 118 on the table to go get Ramsey? And all I got back was a smiley face, right? So I'm not telling you that that's going to happen. That's not what I'm saying. But I felt that way last night. I felt like because they were able to address what they did last night, I feel like that is on the table. I feel like phone calls are being made. And look, there is no doubt he wants to be in Atlanta. He wants to come play for Raw. He wants to come be here. And I think any veteran that is still available or is looking for a place that they can win, I think Atlanta all of a sudden now looks really attractive, again, because of the guys we've talked about with the offense, and now with the defense. You've got a defensive coordinator who has proven himself over the last few years after leaving Atlanta. You've got some young guys here that and by the way, just as a side note, I don't mean to kind of skip around here. But with all these young guys under contract, look what this opens up for possibilities next year in free agency and the year after that, right? Like Atlanta's window, y'all get fucking excited because this window is blowing wide open right now. I just, when you look at this young core, some of these vets that are looking to go win now are going to give a really big time look to Atlanta and want to come here and play. And I'm really excited about that. Because I don't see the Super Bowl collapse in our future. I see the Super Bowl trophy being hoisted up because of where this franchise is at.
I want that Super Bowl trophy with Ryan mentoring Penix on the sideline, with Roddy coaching up the receivers. I need them to get the ring with us too. That'll really drive it home for me. But okay, you talked about you don't have any intel from the source on what we're doing on day 2, but what at 101, what would you do? Do you think we go after maybe a center like Wilson from Georgia or Seth McLaughlin from Ohio State, or do you think would you go defense here?
So let me start out by saying shout out to everybody joining us live right now. There's a lot of people with a lot of questions in our chat, and we appreciate that. But Eric Mikkel actually says that is center on the table today. I think center is absolutely on the table today. I think when you look at 101 and 118, I think center and secondary are both on the table. I think if the first round is any indication, some guys are going to continue to drop and some guys will be available. It would not shock me if you saw Atlanta try to pair those 2 third rounders and move up back into the second round to go grab a couple of these guys that have fallen. For me, I would love to see them put a package together and try to jump into the top 3 here in the second round and go get a guy like Will Johnson, who by all accounts is a top 15 pick and is still sitting in the green room, right? Like he may not have left Lambeau Field last night. He's still sitting there waiting for his name to be called. So for me, I think there's a lot on the table. I think, you'll go center, corner are both big options for today. I wouldn't even be shocked to see a wide receiver, to be honest with you. I mean, Terry Fontenot seems to love his offensive guys. And so it may have been a little painful for him last night because, I put out that report yesterday that he absolutely loved Matthew Golden. I'll be honest with you, I thought with him taking 9 minutes and 59 and a half seconds to turn in that damn card, I thought for sure he was about to have that name called. But I think those are the 3 positions to watch for today. I think center is absolutely on the table. I think corner's on the table. But again, my dream is that they move up in the second round and again, go get one of those guys who fell from the first round, like a Will Johnson, who's still on the table.
Will Johnson would be absolutely wild. Guys, if he didn't get injured, I promise you, it's not even top 15. He's a top 10 pick. But here's the thing, though. The reason why he's sliding so hard, his injury could be long-term. I've been told by some people that really are into scouting that this could be like an arthritic knee situation, kind of like what Gurley had. So that's why he slipped into this. He is not a day 2 probably. He is even injured. He's a day 1 prospect. It's just his long term is in question. That doesn't mean that's what's going to happen, but that's the possibility that he's facing.
Yeah, and you don't. I mean, Todd Gurley, and people forget. I mean, that's why the Falcons didn't take Todd Gurley initially back. What was it, 2016 when they took Beasley? I mean, everybody was really hoping that they would take Gurley. I mean, Gurley was the guy, but Gurley's kid, medicals, right? yeah. I mean, right up this road from I think he's from North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, went to UGA. Obviously had a really good career at UGA. But those medicals scared a lot of people, and obviously we saw why, right? Like his career lasted 5 years, and he was done because he may not be able to walk by the time he's 35. And so if that's what Will Johnson's facing, I understand the slide, and I understand the timidness of letting him sit when it sucks for him. I think unfortunately for him, you wish his agent had been a little bit more honest with him than going to Green Bay and sitting in a green room, because ultimately it's what he and Jalen Milroe at this point. I think for me, I would take a shot at a guy like that. And there's a couple other guys that have slid, put that package together and go try to get something, make something else happen. Cause ultimately I'd rather have 1 high second round pick than 2/3. Maybe that's just me. Again, there's a lot on the table for the Falcons. I'm excited for that.
I want to talk about Kayvon Thibodeaux. You put it out there yesterday that the Falcons were trying to maybe parlay that second round pick to go get Thibodeaux, but the Giants were being unreasonable. What's unreasonable? What did they wanted our first round pick next year? Is that what they
They
wanted?
did. They did. So, on top of having to pay Thibodeau, they wanted a first and a second, which I think is absolutely insane. I would not have given up 2026 for a guy like that, because if we're being honest, the dude's underachieved, right?
Yeah.
Like, he has not lived up to the billing of what he was coming out of Oregon. So I don't fault the Falcons for that. I think they made the right move, and when the Giants wouldn't budge off of that, the Falcons started making phone calls. Just like they did last year. Like, I'll give Terry credit. Terry for the last 2 years has tried to make things happen, and he finally got a team on the other end of the phone that said, "Hell yeah, we'll do a trade with you," and it's worked out. And there's been a lot of swings and misses here, right? Last year we go back to the Daniel Hunter situation. We go back to the draft where they offered 2 firsts and a second to move back into the draft. Terry has tried to do his best, and I shit on him a lot, and I think a lot of it is deserved. But he's also tried to make a lot of things happen, right? Like, he opened up the phone calls. He opened up the lines of communication really early with the Dallas Cowboys last year, week 2. Called the Cowboys and said, "Hey, you got a lot of people you got to pay for. We'll take Micah off your hands." Like, he started that line of communication really early. Nothing came of it. It's okay. He's reached out about Trey Hendrickson. Like, he's been in constant contact trying to get a guy like that. So Terry has tried to make things happen. You can't force things to happen. But it was nice to actually see something fall in his lap, and him be able to take advantage of what he's been trying to do. So, again, he deserves a lot of the disgruntledness. I'm not going to say hate, but he deserves a lot of the disgruntledness from the fan base. But I think yesterday went a long way in soothing that. And I think that there may be some more magic later on tonight.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're the first people to call the team to carpet, right? Like, when they do bad,
Yeah.
we're not going to hold back. But in this
Nope.
situation, you need a pass rusher. You got 2 young ones, and we'll see what happens. But I'm happy that Terry didn't give up a first round pick next year and our second this year, which is essentially what we use to get Pierce. But with Pierce, you have the upside that maybe he develops better than Thibodeau, and you don't have to pay him for 5 years. Thibodeau's gonna want $30 million a year, which he may not be worth that amount. Jeff, one of the more surprising slides, maybe not surprising to you, but that has been sort of like prognosticated in the media, is Shedeur Sanders. He fell out of the first round. Are you surprised?
No, I'm not. And I've said this all along on Twitter. One, I can't make this any more clear than I already have. Um, I am a fan of Shador. I don't think he's as bad as people make him out to be. I don't mind the bravado. I want my quarterback to have that kind of ego, right? Like, I don't need my quarterback to be a ho hum kind of guy. That is the premier position in all of North American sports. I don't care what league you're talking about. The NFL quarterback is the premier position, and I need my guy to be a premier guy, right? I don't mind the flash. I don't mind I don't mind all of those things. The issue with Shedeur is twofold. One, his father. Okay, we all love Prime. I may not love him as much as some people here in Atlanta do, right? Like, people in Atlanta love to talk about how he's the best, the best Atlanta Falcons player of all time. You not a fucking chance. To me, you don't get to be crowned the best player in franchise history when you willfully walked away from that franchise, right? So, sorry, he walked away, didn't want to be here. You lose all that comes along with that, right? The media loves to kiss his ass. Why? We saw it in Colorado this year. If Deion is upset at you as a media person, he pulls your credential. We watched him do it twice. So the media wants to have access to Prime, Coach Prime. So for that reason, that's a big reason for me that NFL teams don't want to. NFL owners, GMs, and coaches don't want to deal with that nonsense. And think about it. Who is the only head coach that Shedeur's ever had?
His dad.
His dad has literally been his head coach from the time he was 6 years old and took over a Pee-wee practice. High school, college, both stops, junior, like all of it, Prime has been his head coach. There is a fear among NFL coaches that dad is still going to be in his ear, behind closed doors, fighting a battle that teams are not willing to fight. Because yes, is he talented? Of course he is. Does he have some issues? Of course he does. There is not a perfect quarterback that has been drafted. To probably Andrew Luck, if we're being honest, right? Like every quarterback since Andrew Luck has had a lot of issues. And Shedeur is definitely not one of those that is perfect. He holds onto the ball too long, doesn't quite read a defense all that well, makes really bad reads at times. Hasn't really shown, he lost. He talks about all the winning he did in college, but ultimately he lost the 3 biggest games of his career. He lost both Celebration Bowls, which, if you're unfamiliar, is the Black National Championship for HBCUs. Lost both of those games when they were highly favored, and then got his ass beat by a bunch of 30-year-olds at BYU in the Alamo Bowl. Right, so the 3 biggest bowl games, biggest games of his career, he went 0 for 3. And again, I'm not knocking on him, but the dude talks about all the winning he did. Well, let's talk about losing the 3 biggest games yet. So look, I am not shocked. They don't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with that nonsense. He comes with a lot of baggage, and like the Ball brothers in the NBA, it's not all his fault. But unfortunately, NFL coaches and GMs and owners aren't like the NBA owners, coaches, and GMs who are willing to put up with that nonsense. They're just simply not willing to do it. And by the way, he may not even be the first quarterback off the board today. Think about that for a minute. He may not be the first quarterback off the board today. And that's but again, that just comes back to what we talked about when we opened up this episode. Guys the media like are not necessarily the guys the teams like. And media and teams don't often bridge that, which is why you always have to be careful when guys say, well, my sources told me they're going here. How many times are those guys correct?
It's exactly why the media, for example, loves someone like Dallas Turner. So Minnesota goes and picks him at 22, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, crazy value. He should have gone to Atlanta at 8. Well, no, he shouldn't have, because they were obviously on Latu. That's what you guys thought along. It's when the mainstream and the teams don't align, the insiders get pissed because they want to know and they want to construct the narrative. Had we tipped our hand to, let's say, Ian Rappaport and said, hey, Ian, we're talking to Sean McVay right now. We're going to come up. Can you put a positive spin on this? All of a sudden, the tone is completely different. It's when they get caught off guard, everyone's just talking shit. So,
because they don't actually know the game they cover. Right, and that's the cue to this. Is these guys like Adam Schefter's, like the Ian Rappaports, they don't know the game they cover. So when you catch them off guard, it's automatically a negative connotation because you bypass their gatekeeping, and they can't fucking stand it. That's the truth about all of this, right? If Atlanta had, like you said, if Atlanta had called Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport and said, hey, we're dealing with the Rams right now, here's what we're gonna do, and gotten the ESPN seal of approval, I promise you $1 million fucking that would have been an A+ or an A- rating on their website within 30 minutes.
100%.
Absolutely would have been. And by the way, just real quick, shout out to Craig following along on live chat. He did call me out. I was wrong. We only do have one pick today. Pick 118 is the 4th round. Yep. Obviously, that is the first round tomorrow. Shout out to you for that. My apologies.
Yeah, but I mean, your point still stands. You could package 101 and 118 and maybe slip up in 100%. The second. So we'll 100%. We'll see if they pulled the trigger on that. Jeff, before we get into a little more draft talk, let's get an update on a QB on our roster right now, Kirk Cousins. What's the latest? Do you think that there's a chance he gets moved tonight?
So I have said all along on numerous episodes, I've said it on Twitter, the Falcons, one of two things has to happen for the Falcons to move Kirk Cousins. You're either going to have to come out of pocket and pay the majority of his contract to take over that contract and give them a lower draft pick, 6th, 7th round, or if the Falcons are going to be expected to continue to cover the majority of that contract, you're going to have to come out of your pocket for a 1st, 2nd, 3rd rounder. That is not going to change. Are some teams desperate? I think a lot of people thought last night with the Steelers not taking a quarterback that they were now going to be open to wheeling and dealing with the Falcons, and that absolutely could be true. I've said all along, and I said this on episode 5, that I thought this could potentially go into the season. And as quarterbacks get hurt, all of a sudden now there's a need for an NFL starting quarterback. But if a team is willing to deal with the Falcons at their price range and what they're looking for, again, one of those two scenarios, the Falcons will absolutely get rid of him. The Falcons are not are not willing to get a low round draft pick and eat the salary. They're not going to do both of those. So you've got to be willing to play ball. And if you are, they'll listen to you, right? If that means they pick up an extra third round draft pick because you want them to cover, I don't know, arbitrary number, $30 million of the contract. Okay, fine. Like they're willing to do that, but you're going to be willing to give them the draft capital that it's going to take in order for them to eat that. So if a team like the Steelers or a team, like, I don't know, the Titans, right? Or, other teams, obviously the Titans don't need a quarterback, but you know what I'm saying? Like if a team on the clock today is saying, hey, yes, we will pick up that number, fine. They will play ball. They'll take a draft pick and they'll have something to show for it. But the Falcons aren't just simply going to get rid of him just to get rid of him, because then ultimately it leaves them again in a hole of having to go out and find and sign a backup quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I mean, it's not only that we're going to have to put on like Kirk's money on our books, or a portion of it. It's that we have to go, and right now they're really, I mean, we signed Easton Stick, right? So a lot of people saw that move and they're like, oh, okay, we're getting ready to move off Kirk, but I don't know if Easton Stick is someone we want playing games, right?
Yeah, it's a camp arm.
Yeah.
Right. He's an arm. You have mini camps coming up, and then obviously, we are 3 months away, literally 3 months away from camp opening up. And that 90 days is going to go really, really quickly. So unless the Falcons are going to draft a quarterback here in the next couple of days, which I don't see happening, although it should, and I'll explain that in a minute, he's just a camp arm. And when I say the Falcons should draft a quarterback, I have said this all along. The NFL is a passing league, right? You can never have too many quarterbacks on your roster that can throw the football with accuracy, timing, and understand the playbook. Go back and you look at the prime of the Patriots, and I always use this as an example. They had the greatest quarterback, arguably, of all time. How many times did they take a quarterback in the third or fourth round while Brady was under contract for 20 years? It was like 6 times, right? They took 6 quarterbacks in the third or fourth round of the NFL draft. And what did they do with those guys? What did they do with Jacoby, with the Jacobys, with the Matt Castles? They flipped them. They developed them and flipped them for bigger draft capital. If you were in the NFL, and by the way, when Tom Brady went hurt, Castle went 11-0, right? Like he was good enough to go. Like I think they missed the playoffs because there was a couple games where they lost early on or whatever it was. But they drafted the quarterbacks, they developed them, and that way, if Brady got hurt, they had their backup ready to go, or they flipped them for a higher draft pick. And I've always said that in the NFL, you should absolutely draft quarterbacks every year, even if it's a 4th round pick. Develop a guy, trade him off for somebody who needs it. Yeah. Right? Like there's no mystique better than a backup quarterback who you have no idea if he's fucking good or not. And if there's the belief out there that he's good, I mean, we did it one time under Matt Ryan, right? We what's his name? Matt Schaub. Right? Yeah, Matt Schaub. And you flipped him for a higher draft capital than you spent on it.
I think we did that the year before Ryan. We flipped him, and then we went into that Joey Harrington era. We flipped him without knowing that Vic was going to jail.
I thought Schaub was here. Was Schaub not here with Matt Ryan?
I don't think he was. Maybe I'm wrong on that. It was so far out. But yeah, that's exactly what we did. We got a 2nd round pick back for him, I think.
Right. But it ultimately, that to me is what. Is what the Falcons and what every team should be doing, quite honestly. You should be drafting a quarterback every year, every other year, developing those guys. Even when you have a young guy, develop them, flip them. And if not, guess what? You cut them, you stash them on your practice squad, like whatever you need to do, you do. But I just, and they're not going to do it this year, right? They're not going to draft a quarterback this year. But next year, I think it should be on their radar late in the NFL draft.
Jeff, someone in the chat jokingly, are you telling us Sanders at 101? See, that's Sanders hilarious. Is the type of guy that thinks he should be starting. He's not going to know his place as a backup, so that wouldn't make sense. But hey, if we're in the 6th round or something, and somehow, some way, someone like Tyler Shuck falls there, that's a guy that can play, right? So that would be interesting. I doubt he falls that far, but that's the type of player you want. You don't want Sanders and all the circus that comes with him, especially when you have a young starter in place.
And yeah, by the way, Matt Schaub left 2 years before Matt Ryan got here, so I was completely fucking off on that one.
No, the reason why I remember that is I think shortly after we traded Schaub, Vic ended up with those court charges or whatever. Otherwise, that trade doesn't happen. And if that trade doesn't happen, we probably don't get Matt Ryan because Schaub probably holds it together in 07. So a necessary evil. Jeff, let's shift gears. Our division rivals. I want to talk about what they did. Carolina took Tet McMillan. Saints got Kelvin Banks, someone that we were high on too. And Tampa Bay, oddly, takes Emeka Ibuka, who is praised for high IQ, good leadership. But, I mean, you have Evans, you have Godwin, you have McMillan. So it's kind of like, where does Ibuka really land within? I mean, it's great you have 4 receivers, but that almost felt like a panic pick. Which picks did you like that our division rivals made? Which picks are you kind of like, what are they doing here?
You know, it's one of those where it's really hard to give credit, right? I always, every time I talk about how I am I'm a really big fan of what's his name in Tampa. Like, I feel like I need to drink bleach, right? Like quarterback. And all of a sudden I'm a huge fan of Baker. Have been since his time in Oklahoma, right? But every time I say that because he plays for the Bucs now, I need to go drink bleach. But when you look at those picks, the McMillan pick by Tampa, by
Carolina,
Charlotte, makes a lot of sense, right? You went out and you got a 6'4", 6'5" stretch for Bryce Young, who at the end of the year looked like he had finally learned how to be an NFL quarterback, right? And so now you went out and you got him a weapon. You probably can't fucking protect him, but you went out and you got him a really good weapon. Because I think arguably, I know Travis Hunter went too, but McMillan to me is a guy that's a far better wide receiver than Travis Hunter is. And for me, it's not even debatable. So you went out, you got him. I really do like that pick. But as a guy who was an offensive lineman for 20 years, Kelvin Banks is a guy I wanted here. I've said it a million times. I wanted him here to protect the blind side of Michael Penix. I love that pick for the Saints. It sucks that he goes there because I absolutely will not root for him now. But I think those two absolutely knocked it out of the park. And as far as Tampa, Emeka Ibuka, that's probably, of the three, that's probably the worst. I'm sure he's going to be a fine wide receiver. Obviously, he went in the first round. He's got some talent. He was fine at Ohio State last year. Obviously, wasn't their number one, which should just show you how deep they were at Ohio State at wide receiver, because you could make the argument that Ibuka was probably their number 3 for most of the season. So for me, if I had to put it in order, just based upon the need, I would actually go the order of how they were drafted. I would say McMillan 1, because again, you gave Bryce Young what he needed in Charlotte, which is a weapon. You gave him a big weapon. You gave him a big time target. You've got, you don't have a quarterback, but damn it, you got an offensive tackle now. And you look at the Saints the last 2 years, they've addressed both tackle spots. I think they're building the right way. I have always maintained, for me, I will never take a quarterback in the first round until I have the offensive line set. I just won't do it and the example that I give is Patrick Mahomes. When you look at the Chiefs built both lines of scrimmage, and the last piece they needed was Patrick Mahomes, right? They go get that final piece. They go get a guy that, by the way, most people had no idea who Patrick Mahomes was. They couldn't tell you he went to Texas Tech. They couldn't tell you how good he was in college. They have no idea. But he was the final piece that they needed, and look what it's turned into. I think the Saints, as much as I hate to say it, they're seem to be building it the right way. You got both bookend tackles. They're building the offensive lines. They're trying to do it right so that when they do go draft a quarterback, and I think you can make an argument that they're eyeing next year for a very specific hometown kid, that they're going to make sure that he's going to be protected either way. And then for me, with the Bucs taking a wide receiver, I don't know that doesn't change who they are. That doesn't change them at all. It doesn't make them any more of a threat in the division than they were last year. So for me, I would get it like that. But again, ultimately, I think the Falcons had the best day of anybody in the NFC South, and that's not me because I'm wearing Falcons shit. I'm just saying, when you look overall, the Falcons had a much better day than anybody else in the NFC South. Fuck the Saints.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, last year they went and got Fuaga, my favorite lineman in last year's draft.
Yeah.
Now they get Banks, who you can argue he's just as good as Will Campbell. So they're definitely building up that line. I hope it's not for a quarterback coming out next year, because if they get Nussmeier or even Arch, that would be a little scary behind that line. So hopefully they go and draft someone this year, because I don't think this year's QB class is going to be as good as next year.
No, next year's quarterback class is absolutely insane, right? And you know, you got Cade Klubnik, you got Nussmeier coming out. You'll have what's his name that just left Georgia, transferred to Miami. Who? Beck. Yes, I'm still hot. Yeah, I'm still high on Carson Beck. I know Georgia fans love to shit on him. I'm still high on Carson Beck. I think Nussmeier probably has the best arm in that class. I think Cade Klubnik's the best overall quarterback. And by the way, they faced off in week 1 in Clemson in Death Valley under the lights. And then you have a guy like Arch Manning, who, by the way, to me, Arch Manning is Shedeur Sanders 2.0. There's a lot of hype because of the name, not necessarily because of the talent. But I guess we'll find out a lot about Arch Manning here in the next 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, definitely. So, and that could be a reason why, by the way, that the Rams wanted to stockpile on first-round picks. They're probably going to try to get aggressive and move up next year to get Stafford's replacement. Jeff, speaking of other trade-ups, Travis Hunter and Jackson Dart were the other two players taken with a team trading up. So obviously the Jags gave up their first-round pick in 2026 to move up 3 spots to go take Travis Hunter, and the Giants slid up 9 spots to go from, I believe, 33 to 24 to go get Jackson Dart. Do you like either move?
No, absolutely not. You know, when I look at what they did in Jacksonville, and a lot of people want to blame Trevor Lawrence as if he's the problem in Jacksonville. The problem in Jacksonville is exactly what they fucking did yesterday. Right, you have a bunch of idiots running the front office who don't know what they're doing, and ultimately you went out and got Travis Hunter, who to me is a gimmick. Yes, he's a hell of an athlete. He's a local kid here, went to Collins Hill High School. There's a lot of things you can say. I still don't know that I would have given him the Heisman, but I understand why he got it. But when he faced off against the elite wide receivers, couldn't hang with them. And then when he was faced with a couple of the better DBs he faced, he couldn't do anything there either, right? So you went out and got a guy who's essentially probably the 4th best wide receiver prospect in this draft, and maybe the 5th or 6th best DB prospect in this draft, and you drafted him number 2 overall because you're hoping to sell tickets. This doesn't help Trevor Lawrence. This doesn't make them any better on offense. This doesn't make them any better on defense, if we're being completely honest. People think the Falcons got fleeced. The Jaguars absolutely got fleeced for a guy who's not going to be their number 1 on either side of the fucking football. So I hate that draft pick. They would have been better off staying at number 5 and going to get a guy like McMillan, right? You go out and you want to get Trevor Lawrence an actual target. You had an actual target, and instead he's going, and by the way, it works out well for us, right? Going to the Jets, because I think that was one of those moves that helped facilitate Jalen Walker sliding down to number 15. But if you really wanted Trevor Lawrence to have some help, you'd have taken McMillan. Again, big target, big wide receiver, fast, his catch radius is absolutely asinine. That to me was a dumb move. And then what the fuck are the Giants doing? How many quarterbacks do you need? Like, what are you gonna line Jameis Winston up at tight end now? Like what are you doing? And by the way, I love Jackson Dart. Last year, you can go back and you can check my Twitter, because I'm sure everybody will fucking do it anyway. I had Jackson Dart as the best returning quarterback in college football coming into this last year. I thought he was the Heisman Trophy frontrunner. Like, I really thought he was going to have that good of a year, and obviously he had a step back. But when you look at all the tools, for me, when you look at the 3 quarterbacks, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, those were the three quarterbacks that everybody had at the top of the list, right, in some sort of order. All very similar. Right, the tools are all similar. Their deficiencies are all similar. I would have taken Jackson Dart before the other 2. Call me racist, whatever. It has nothing to do with the fact that he's fucking white. I just think that his body of work in the SEC going from USC, but then starting 38 games at Ole Miss. He wasn't a traveling salesman like Cam Ward, who had to go from jump to jump to jump to jump. He wasn't a Shedeur Sanders who had to have daddy, coach his way up to make sure that he was able to go be a FBS quarterback. Yeah, and save the fucking comments because I know they're coming. He wasn't ever going to be a quarterback at Georgia or Alabama, which is why he committed to FIU to begin with. Jackson Dart was that dude at USC. Again, started as a true freshman, wasn't happy, so he left, and then started 38 games at Ole Miss. So for me, I thought Jackson Dart would have been quarterback number one. I wouldn't have taken any of these quarterbacks in the first round to begin with, let alone at number one. But the move just made absolutely no sense for the Giants because they didn't need a fucking quarterback. Like, you have Russell Wilson, you have Jameis Winston, you have Tommy DeVito, who's trash anyway. But now you have a fourth quarterback. What, like, again? You're gonna run the Notre Dame box with four fucking quarterbacks? Like, what are you doing with this? It made absolutely no sense. They had a great number pick at 3 overall with Abdul Carter, but then for you to trade back into the first round to go get a fourth quarterback, I'm just glad if I was a Giants fan, I'd have drunk bleach and jumped off a bridge by now, to be honest with you.
And Jeff, why is the mainstream media not ripping them? Because every single mock draft had the Giants trading up to get Jackson Dart. You can look at it. Schrager, Daniel Jeremiah, all of these insiders knew about this trade 3 days ago. That is why they're not ripping that trade. That is why no one's questioning, oh, they got 4 quarterbacks in the room. By the way, you can call Dart QB1. I don't think that, look, set aside Ward. Let's just look at Dart. I don't think Dart goes anywhere near the first round last year. Like, he might fall somewhere between Nix and Rattler, because Rattler went in round 5. That was just such a big variance last year.
Yeah.
But I think he's closer to like a second or third rounder. He's not sniffing the first round last year, in my opinion.
No, but that's why he came back, because his NFL draft grade, I think, was 3 to 5 last year, right? But that's why Cam Ward found a new home, because his draft grade last year was 6th round of free agency, right? Like, none of these quarterbacks that are going to go in the first 2 rounds this year would have been drafted in the first 5 or 6 rounds last year. I think all of them probably 7th round draft picks last year. Despite, because typically when you take a draft card, you can almost always add an extra round onto that thing, right? Just because of needs and everything else. So, you look at the quarterbacks who went in the first round this year between Dart and Ward. Last year, they're either not getting drafted or they're 6th or 7th round, right? Like, it's just, that's how bad the quarterback year was this year. And next year's a lot better than this year. But again, I think both of those trades, again, call me a homer, the Falcons, of the 3 trades that took place yesterday, the Falcons had the best trade of the day.
Yeah. And look, did we pay a premium? Yeah, maybe. But we got our guy. We in our draft board, Pierce was top 3, and we got him. So yeah. I don't know what to say. And Terry Fontenot dropped something in his presser too. I think he had the highest hurry rate or pressure rate out of every edge rusher in this class. So yep. For the first time, I actually feel really good about our depth at deep. You're talking about, we already had Leonard Floyd. We have Arnold Ebiketie. Now we get Pierce and Walker. Now there's just, for the first time, there's so much talent everywhere, and hopefully they all come together. I think Raul was talking about how the pass rush is going to be sort of like a basketball team where people are just coming in and out, and I think he was kind of referring to that last year too, but I totally see that vision now this year.
So shout out to my nephew. He's listening live. He just sent me the thing, and it was 2 things. One, he had the highest success rate overall in college football. And number 2, he had the highest percentage of pass rush with a pressure last season at 23.4%. And that's, Braden Swinson, 20%, Abdul Carter, 19.6, Jalen Walker, 19.5, Mike Green, 17.8, Mikael Williams, 11.5. And the one caveat, a star that I would put at Jalen Walker, let's remember last year, he played all 3 levels at Georgia, right? He was a rush end at times. He was an off the ball linebacker at times, and they even had him in fucking safety some of the time, right? So this wasn't a guy who was just a 7 or 9 technique lined up trying to go get the quarterback like a lot of these guys were. This was a guy that moved all around the football and still have a decent success rate like that, speaks volumes about who Jalen Carter is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff, if one, if another guy, if Mike Green falls to 101 somehow, some
No,
way,
no.
no, okay.
For me, I hate to cut you off, right? And I don't ever do that. I have no desire to have Mike Green on my roster.
But do you think the Falcons? I know I get that, but do you think like he's still on the Falcons board?
No, I think they've addressed that need at edge, and I
Yeah.
think they're going to move on.
Okay. Fair enough.
With the Leonard Floyd signing, right? With drafting of these two, you now have 3 edge rushers. Don't forget, you still have Trice, who's coming off, who will be back this year. You've got, and hell, they may even bring back
Judon.
Judon, right? Like he's still out there unsigned. And so, there's still, and for me, I would rather have Matthew Judon again than have Mike Green. That'll piss me because I know there's a lot of Mike Green fans out there because they bought into what the wolf tickets the media is selling. But I think the Falcons are not. You won't see the Falcons draft a defensive end this year. You probably won't see them draft one next year. If they were to draft a defensive lineman, tonight or tomorrow, it would be a defensive tackle, which I wouldn't be mad at.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. One more thing that I wanted to get across before we hop off, Jeff. I know we were talking a little bit about Jalen Ramsey earlier, yep. But do you think that what do you call it? Do you think that's going to take? Do you think that because I think they were getting rumors that they were looking for a second. Do you think a third or fourth would be enough for that? Like, what's the Dolphins' asking price?
So let's remember what they paid for him. They paid a third round and a tight end for him. I said it on episode 5. Give them a third round and Kyle Pitts. Give them what they got for him. In hell, it may even be a little bit of an upgrade at tight end. I don't know. I just, for me, at this point, I wouldn't give up a second round pick for Ramsey, and I don't think the Falcons would be willing to do so either. Again, this is a guy entering year 10 of his career. He'll be 31. Yes, he's on the verge of having what would be a Hall of Fame career. Like he's been that good. And I think he provides a lot of leadership and a lot of the veteran presence, the Super Bowl ring. All of those things are very much intangibles that you can't draft that, right? Like you can sign it, you can trade for it. You can't draft that. And so I think there are a lot of intangibles that are really intriguing. And so I don't know that I would give a second, but I would absolutely give 101 for him. I would absolutely send 101 and Kyle Pitts for him. I may even give you a third this year and a third next year for him. Right? Like I'm not giving you above a third. I'll give you 2/3. I'm not giving you a second though, and I'm not damn sure not giving you a first. Right? So I think if the Dolphins really want, if the relationship is really soured and the Dolphins want to move off of him, and the Falcons are one of the 2 preferred destinations between here and I think DC was the other one. The football team was the other rumor that he was interested in going to. I think it would behoove the Falcons to get into a bidding war. But again, part of that bidding war is I would not move off a third round pick for him.
Okay. I'm going to change gears on you. I apologize. Now I'm going to switch back to rookies. You put this out there, but I just want you to address it to the audience as well.
Okay.
People were talking about off-field issues for James Pierce and Mike Green. Can you elaborate on the differences in those off-field issues and whether or not we have any whether we should be concerned about that for James Pierce?
So I think the first one was the rumor about Mike Green, right? The rumor was that there were some sexual assault allegations. None of them have ever been confirmed, right? One was in high school, one was at UVA. But I do have actual friends, not acquaintances, not sources. I have actual friends that are NFL coaches, okay? And if you pay attention to my Twitter, you know exactly who they are. We converse not frequently, but they were a part of a conversation that his team's conversation with it was a Zoom call with Mike Green. And when Mike was asked about the assault on a woman who was hospitalized because the assault was that brutal, his attitude immediately flipped, which is crazy because you had to know the question was coming. And all he could say was, I'm over that. I'm in therapy. I'm moving on. It's not going to happen again. probably the wrong answer, right? Like NFL teams are looking for accountability. And so, you have a guy who has beaten a woman so bad she was hospitalized versus a guy with James Pierce. He had an altercation with a cop. And look, I know there are a lot of really right-leaning people, and this is not a political show. I'm not here to bang on left or rights. I do both. I bang on both of them enough on Twitter because I can't stand politicians, right? But a run-in with the police during a traffic stop is not the same as beating a woman, right? Those are not character issues. We've all seen traffic stops where cops are absolute a-holes. We've all seen traffic stops where it's not the cop who's the a-hole, it's the passenger. And until we see the video, we don't know how it went, but we do know that it was a traffic stop where he got belligerent with a cop, and that was that. It wasn't him beating somebody. It wasn't him selling dope. It wasn't him, doing it. It was him getting into a battle with a cop. And it's not like he got out and he got physical. They got into a verbal altercation. Something that honestly, even if you are a staunch cop supporter, you've probably done in your time as well. You've gotten a little belligerent with a cop, right? Like that's, you get irritated that they pull you over doing their job and they have a really tough job to do. There's no doubt about that one. But to me, there's a huge difference in the character assassinations that are taking place with a guy like James Pierce, with a guy like Mike Green, because what they were accused of doing or what they've admitted to doing are two very, very different situations in hand. One of them, the Falcons would never put up with. The other one, you're going to go have a seat in Terry Fontenot's office and have a conversation with your position coach, your head coach, and your general manager.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the Falcons. The guy clearly has pass rushing talent, and he fell out of the first round. Like, I mean, that it's not everyone probably took notice. So it's just going to be interesting to see how much he's going to slip in the draft.
No, and look, he may go in the top 5 picks tonight. He might, right? But ultimately, I knew of 5 different NFL teams that took Mike Green completely off their draft boards, right? Like it was that bad of a situation where he was completely taken off of their draft boards because 1, the situation was really that bad, but then 2, the lack of accountability was also really eye-opening for those teams.
That's crazy, Jeff. Well, I think that pretty much wraps us up today. On a lighter note, one last question for you.
Yes, sir.
How many sacks does James Pierce need to get for you to sing Rocky Top?
Will never fucking happen.
Come on,
ever.
Man. You got to give me a number, dude.
16.
He hit 16. Oh, and that's it. Okay.
Yes, if he hit 16, as a rookie, I will sing Rocky Top for you.
Let's go, baby.
Okay?
All right, cool. All right. That's all I needed to hear. But anyways, guys, that wraps up. Billy Goat wants us to clip that. That wraps us the 6th episode of Flight Path. Thank you guys for everyone that listened live. We're gonna upload this to YouTube and Spotify tomorrow, but seriously, really appreciate your support. You can find Jeff on Twitter at JMB_CU16 and myself at Andrew Duhan. Really appreciate all you guys and hope that the Falcons get a really good player again tonight. Let's keep surprising. Terry's off to a hot start. Let him keep that momentum going.
Yes, sir. Hey, rise up, go Falcons. And as we said yesterday, the motto for 2025 is FTH, baby.
Love it.